and welcome to Broker Tools, where we unpack the tools, systems, and strategies that help brokers optimize the way they work. I'm Katie, your host, and today we are catching up with Derek from Odoo. Odoo is that all-in-one CRM software that includes portals and e-signature software. So if you have been looking for a software that is more comprehensive than a basic CRM, then Odoo might be the way for you. Derek, welcome to the pod.
Hi, Katie. Thanks so much for having me on.
You are most welcome. Before we even, and most people know this, I love a good pre-chat. We always have a pre-chat before we do these podcast lives. And I discovered in our pre-chat that you had a whole entrepreneurial life before you even began working with Odoo. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
So I've been in sales as my day job for the last decade or so across a number of different industries, but I've always had a bit of an entrepreneurial angle. Like when I was studying my commerce degree at university, I was running a fitness business, which was, selling gym memberships, subcontracting under a gym, selling personal training, running group fitness, selling programs, and sort of figuring out ways to do that. And then once I got into the corporate world, I sort of saw how the partners at the big accounting firms are quite entrepreneurial and sales are sort of rainmaker roles. And I really like that, but not the sort of 20-year climb to be a partner at a big firm. So, I lived and worked in Asia for Australian entrepreneurs when I was based in the Philippines. And most of our clients were entrepreneurs, startups, scale-ups. So it was just sort of marinating in entrepreneurs for years and years. And I've had other roles that were a little bit more selling to big corporate and big government. So I've seen the compare and contrast between the top end of town and the sort of main street entrepreneurs. And then, while doing that, I've sort of been part of business networking groups with entrepreneurs as well as running an entrepreneurial podcast in a past life as well. So, just sort of always learning new things, but seeing, how entrepreneurs work and think, and then seeing how and work inside entrepreneurial companies and seeing how large corporates also sort of operate and think. So seeing the different parallel universes some people exist in.
Nice. And I guess some of those entrepreneurial things that you mentioned were being part of a virtual assistant company, setting that up over in the Philippines. And then was it you came back to Australia?
So as an employee so 6 months after being an accountant, I realized that wasn't what I wanted to do. So I thought if I'm changing sort of professions, what I'd studied for years, I might as well sort of change countries. So I landed in the Philippines, having never visited Asia, and it was a marketing internship. So I spent 6 months sort of as a marketing intern. And then the CEO said, I think you'd have a good knack for sales and business development. I didn't really know what that meant, but I learned a lot sort of apprenticing under him and sitting in a lot of boardroom sort of pitches from an excellent solution seller, and then ended up being in sort of sales roles, and then helped set up the US office and operations. So spent some time over in America in another role as well, but on the sort of sales, entrepreneurial, selling to entrepreneurs, working with and for entrepreneurs, for the majority of my career.
And I guess this is where like kinds of industry matter, because not only did you do virtual assistant support or infrastructure and entrepreneur B2B sales for them, you also went into cybersecurity.
Yeah, so that was when I came back from Asia after a great half decade living and working there. I ended up in a US cybersecurity training company, so doing very technical training for the ASX 200, military, police, government, which was again a whole different universe. And you see, how much like procurement, for example, factors into that, all these sort of different regulations, again, government, state, federal, civilian, military, and how much different, an ASX 50 or 100 operates from the entrepreneurs I'd been sort of dealing with in the previous 5 years. So it was a real, sort of learning process and seeing it was quite an entrepreneurial company, as a US company. So they operated quite entrepreneurially, but selling to really the top end of the tip of the spear globally, Fortune 500, ASX 100, and government and military. So some of the most sort of regulated, strict, high stakes banks, data, security, intelligence, at the government level that you can sort of deal with. So really the opposite end of the spectrum, and very informative to compare and contrast that to how, your average sort of startup, scale up, move fast and sort of break things entrepreneur operates, to the very antithesis, but and how to sort of, work and succeed in both environments.
Yeah, and I guess obviously we were talking about your career before Odoo, but I think these factor into how a broker gets to optimize the way they work. And one of the things I realize is that you also ran a podcast in and alongside of these things, and you get to learn a lot from having these podcasts. You also ran events with BNI, and then you got to meet a lot of, I guess, people in the real estate and financing industry as a part of that role. Where do you think, I guess, some of the best lessons or insights that you've had into the industry because of those jobs that you had even before Odoo started?
Yeah, I think it is that exposure to just very different industries. Like I used to say to people, the sort of size of business is a variable most people don't think. They work at 5 law firms, but they're all giant multinationals or they're all, micro boutiques. And that sort of size of a business matters so much. A lot of 5,000 employee companies operate in a similar way, and a lot of 5-person companies operate in a similar way across industries. And seeing those variables, how it happens when you're 5 staff, you're 50, you're 500, you're 5,000, and all sort of levels of growth. But yeah, so in some days I'll be in a room full of real estate professionals, conveyancers, mortgage brokers, accountants, financial planners, commercial lenders, asset finance, like in sort of main street, local property heavy, asset heavy real estate, face to face sort of transactions. But then my podcast was interviewing the fastest growing new businesses all across Australia. So seeing entrepreneurial businesses, seeing small and growing, small local, people have been multi-generational business, and then day to day having clients in Australia, UK, Singapore, America, Canada, who I was working, like I said, with the offshore staffing space, but seeing how, again, just sort of all different layers operated, and then compare and contrast that to my past experience with, like I said, the very big sort of, government, military, police, corporate Australia, and how they all function in, unique ways that all work for where they are, but seeing the miscommunication gaps, I guess, sometimes where, again, a lot of brokers are small businesses and even sole traders, but they interact with the biggest companies in Australia, the big banks, and then they also interact with, real estate agents and accountants, and are sort of, again, uniquely positioned at the intersection of all these different, sort of parallel groups within society that often don't overlap. If you're in a big corporate and all your clients and suppliers are big corporate, you're in a small business, all your clients and suppliers are local small businesses. Mortgage brokers are a unique crossover industry that is, yeah, operating at multiple levels. So I think I have a bit of an appreciation for that versus someone who's only been in small business, only been in self-employment, or only been in like government for their entire career.
Nice. And again, with those like learnings that you've gathered throughout your career, what led you to joining Odoo?
Yeah, so my wife and I are living in Melbourne. That's where we grew up. Like I said, spent a bit of time in Asia, a bit of time in America, but wanting a bit of a lifestyle change to move up to Queensland. So I was looking at jobs, and it just sort of came up on my radar as a tech business in the Gold Coast. I thought, okay, we want to move to Queensland, Brisbane, Gold Coast, and it sort of surprised me. But as I've spent a bit of time here, it's also a bit of a fascinating parallel. Odoo itself is a European company. The founder is a tech guy who started, a garage sort of software business 20, 25 years ago. But unlike most big tech companies that are sort of publicly listed or owned by venture capital, private equity, it's still majority privately held. So despite being the founder and CEO, he's still coding and designing the product, and he's still majority owner, even though now it's about 8,000 staff globally, 200,000 clients, 15 million users. And the Australian office is only 3 years old. So it's gone from 0 to 85 staff in 3 years. So it's almost like an entrepreneurial Australia, New Zealand headquarters based in the Gold Coast, part of a sort of Hong Kong, APAC sort of mid-market scale up with a couple of hundred people, but actually then part of a Belgium sort of 8,000 person multinational. So we're getting sort of layers inside layers inside layers, and seeing the interactions of all of that, I think, is sort of the perfect complement to my background. So I sort of fell into it a little bit, more based on geography. But once I sort of went down the rabbit hole a bit and understood the founder story and the business and working in the business and with the clients, who again, often sort of small, medium-sized business and entrepreneurs, it sort of was almost like a perfect fit role for me, but I just sort of fell into it, and life is like that sometimes.
Yeah, and I think making those kind of switches really can impact life because once you start doing one particular job and then you move to another, you realize that this is what you've been doing. You've been gathering different kinds of lead flows along the way and different, I guess, intelligence of customers and opportunities. And you've probably learnt that throughout this process, how you document, how you manage your relationships really do matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And you see how, yeah, different businesses function, but how, yeah, you can compound the skills rather than feeling like you're starting from scratch. When you change, you can take something that seems very unusual in one environment and bring it to a new environment. And to them, it's sort of like you invented fire because no one in their environment, maybe it's big corporate, maybe it's small business, they rarely cross over often. So you can sort of bring the best ideas from different sides of the economy. And often that's sort of, again, where big opportunities are, where things that a small business wouldn't think twice about is quite innovative in a big company and vice versa. So yeah, always trying to learn and collect things as I go. And also, like you said, yeah, keep sort of compounding the learnings and building my understanding of all these different industries and like for brokers, what they're going through, what they're thinking about, what are their challenges, what are their opportunities.
Yeah, and I guess often with these challenges and opportunities, I guess compliance is probably one of the biggest headaches that you've probably come across. How does Odoo actually help brokers, not even have to think about compliance because it's really part of their process?
Yeah, a big way is having everything in one system. Even if you are compliant, if everything's spread across five different systems, you've got a CRM, you've got an invoicing software, you've got other industry specific tools, you've got a marketing email list software, you've got, five other tools. Even if you are compliant, it can be hard to sort of sort, sift, and filter. If you had to produce a report, you had to prove a sort of documentation. So I'd say the biggest thing for Odoo is being a single source of truth where you can have all your customers, all your referral partners, all your suppliers, all your leads, all your past clients, everyone in one place. And you can also see, like an audit trail of the history, or if someone edits something, you see who edited, when and where, someone signed something, you have the signing certificates, and having all of that in one place. I think it's a bit like, if you've got everything in one house, obviously it's easier to find stuff, and you've got spread across five different properties, your friend's house, your parents' house. That's sort of what a lot of small businesses that are putting out individual fires. Oh, I need an email tool. Let me get an email tool. I need an invoicing. I need a marketing tool. I need an automation tool. And you spread all the, information and documentation across a lot of systems. It can make it very chaotic to even see, oh, I thought we did it, but I didn't check the other system, or the person responsible is employee A, employee B didn't even realize that, or they thought the other person was handling it. Whereas a single view, everyone's on the same page. Everyone is looking at the same thing, and reporting data, and I'm sure we'll talk about in the future, automations, AI are only really possible when everything's in one place. If it's across disparate systems, then you're building bridges or APIs between systems, and more it starts to sort of unravel or become very unmanageable.
Nice. Did you want to kind of give us a walkthrough of what Odoo is? Because I also understand that sometimes people say, hey, you need a CRM. But, what is a CRM? Because you often buy these one tools for particularly CRM, but then you realize you need to do these add-on bits. And I guess that's what Odoo has noticed. Sure, CRM is a component, but the add-on bit need to not be fragmented. It needs to be all part of one system.
Yeah, like that's sort of the key inside of Odoo, that subscription fatigue, even just logging in between systems. You log in, you log out, you open a browser tab, you two-factored on your phone, all those things individually are great, but across 6 apps or 3 staff, suddenly it's a big tax on productivity. So yeah, if you like, I could do a brief screen share to sort of show a little bit of a visual of sort of the look and feel of Odoo.
Yeah, that would be great.
Yeah, so let me just pull that up.
And as you pull it up, to confirm, Odoo has Australia data residency, doesn't it?
Yeah, so the servers are in Sydney. There are cross-continental backups across Asia and Europe. We can do on-prem hosting, which a lot of software businesses don't. So if you do want it locally hosted, you can host it locally. But yeah, so we are flexible based on the requirements of individual and their industry and their needs.
No.
So yeah, like I said, to give a sort of high level tool, because Odoo is a little bit different. Like I said, it's not a point solution where it's just email marketing, it's just a CRM, it's just an invoicing tool. It is essentially an all-in-one system. So you see all of these different apps on the screen. They are all connected to one database, which is where you get that power of being able to have a single thing like a contact list. And then whether you want to send an email, an SMS, a WhatsApp, whether you want to connect it to a task or a event or a signature, it's all a help desk ticket for customer service issues after someone's got their loan with you. It is all pulling from one system. And then another thing that a lot of business owners, especially entrepreneurial minded brokers, have is essentially more ideas than they can use. And a big frustration they come across is having an idea, like they want to run a newsletter, they want to run a referral partner event to generate more referrals every quarter, but they get sort of stuck in the how do I do that? How do I get event software to sell tickets? How do I send an email blast to my referral partners? How do I get a full list in one place, my referral partners? So you've got this single architecture of one database, but Odoo has about 80 pre-built apps. So say, for example, I go into apps and I type event because you want event management software. You can click install and it will literally sort of add that app on in about 30 seconds. And that app talks to all the other apps. So if you want to go to your contacts and see a list of all your referral partners, you've tagged as referral partners, and then send an email blast to invite them to an event or to buy a ticket to an event you're hosting, that entire flow is in one system. You've already paid for the subscription. We don't charge per app, it's per user. And I would say that's sort of the biggest value of Odoo, is having the ability to turn your ideas into reality. So this is sort of just prompting me to build a website where I can then sort of host that, even that. So you've got the Odoo website or your own website. You can add e-learning events, appointment contact sort of onto that. So now it's added the events module. So you can have a page on your website for upcoming events. And there's nothing here because we haven't scheduled them. But that's where adding an event section to your website that then connects into your back end is like sort of 3 clicks in 3 minutes. It's not find an agency, hire a freelancer, look at 5 vendors, add more software subscriptions, create a new login. It's already sort of there and done. And that's sort of, yeah, the Odoo way to sort of keep up with your ambition and ideas as a mortgage broker, commercial broker, asset finance person.
Also, and do you have the ability to do like learning systems and videos for onboarding as
Yeah, so
well?
that's a great sort of next example. So we have an e-learning module. So if I type learn, there's a full learning management system with gamification, quizzes, scoring. So for example, if you have a new hire process, like a new broker, a new admin process, you want to watch 10 videos, understand your business workflows. Maybe for clients, here's the videos about first home buyer options or things like that. Like I said, 2 clicks, I've now got the e-learning app, and that can also be pushed straight to my website, and I can be building a course, building quizzes, publishing content, tracking attendance, reviews, having a message board, again, all included in the subscription. But turning that idea, I should train my referral partners to give me better leads. I should train my clients on how to get the best option. I should have a FAQ video on refinancing or buying your first commercial investment versus residential investment. The gap from that to reality is a couple of clicks, not new software, new team, new learnings, and it's all in the same interface, the same login, and the same subscription.
No, and maybe we should start at the beginning because if we think about an entrepreneurial journey, let alone a broker journey or a client journey, when a new lead comes in, we're trying to document and capture this information. And I guess this is the value of Odoo and what, generally speaking, a CRM does because that kind of captures your contact, your maybe a business association, you get to label them from as a source, and that is the CRM feature itself. Would that
Yeah,
be
so you're right.
fair to
That's
say?
sort of that's where most journeys start. You've done some sort of activity, you've gone to a networking event, you've given a talk, you've gone on a webinar, you've, built up referral from happy clients, you've asked your clients to refer their friends and family, maybe when you followed up or refinance or did something for them. And that's when the first point you want to go into the CRM. I guess just to take one step back for people who aren't familiar with the CRM, in simple terms, it's sort of like a 24/7 executive assistant who remembers everything you said and did, remembers every commitment you made, remembers where everything's up to, and also can work when you're asleep to send out reminders, do things, can remind you and prompt you that, you said you would do this, and can remember exactly where you're up to. But instead of being a six-figure, high-level chief of staff executive assistant, because the software is sort of $500 or $1,000 a year instead of, $100,000 a year. So that's sort of, I guess, a real world equivalent of what a CRM does when sort of used properly. So
Yeah.
this is a sample CRM. And again, it can be a little bit overwhelming, but essentially it's tracking all the stages. So a new lead might come in from an email, a web form. You might push it in through a digital bridge from like Facebook or Meta if you're running ads. And that comes in and sort of captures the details and the contact information. And what's probably a bit unique about Odoo, because we're not just a CRM, you don't have to force fit all the stages of your entire business into this layout because it's very good for sort of sales stages, but sometimes CRMs aren't as good for the processing and post settlement, other things like that. So if you click on one, this is where you can have the information, the phone number, tags, like what they're doing. You can also set up logic based on the source. It can auto tag there. You can have notes, comments. You can see if it could be a duplicate, someone who inquired with you before, if you've got a meeting scheduled with them, internal communications. So I'll sort of pause for a moment there, but that's sort of, how Odoo works. And then within Odoo, single subscription, you've got all the things you're familiar with, like a CRM or a workflow, project management, or an e-sign, or like we mentioned, the sort of events and e-learning.
Nice. And I guess if we wanted to, I just drill a little bit down further on what a CRM functionally is, not just within Odoo, but generally, if you were to look anywhere else for a CRM, the only thing a CRM particularly does is what I would call a dynamic spreadsheet type of thing. So if you put in a name and the type of opportunity it is, however you would normally fill out a spreadsheet, that's what a CRM does, but it gets to also segment your relationships. So this is your deal opportunity board. Is that what you would call it? Your deal or an opportunity board?
Yeah, this is whoever in the business is doing the sales of sort of taking people from first inquiry through to collecting all the paperwork. This is before that sort of handoff in a sole trader. They're, the janitor, the CEO, the marketing manager, the broker, they're everything. But especially as the team grows, this is where, the core sort of sales and making sure everything is progressing, people are a good fit, they understand the unique value that you provide. Ideally, you've got like a niche or some specialized expertise in what you do. And this is where you can drag and drop things between. You can use the stars to prioritize. So if you've got a long list of deals, you can sort of prioritize. You can color code. I've got 2 overdue tasks, 1 today, 2 plans. I want to say, quickly, what's overdue? I can filter just to my overdue. So, like I said, in simple terms, it is sort of like a spreadsheet. But the reason why you would use this over a spreadsheet is the ability to, have other things you can sort of add on top of this. Like, for example, if you wanted to do an email marketing campaign, you could go into the Odoo email marketing app, and then I can sort of show you, for example, if I go into Odoo email marketing, I want to look at my leads and I want to add a condition. So I want to say tag is equal to commercial, and I want to send an email to my 10 commercial leads with a template that I can edit. It's that ability that you can't do in a spreadsheet to then send an email opportunity or something like that to a specific set of people I'm speaking to, or SMSF specific information, asset finance, first home buyer tag, or if you're handling across states with different government incentives, you could have different things there. So that's where the connection versus just a flat sort of spreadsheet, it sort of adds layers of extra capabilities and technology and automations on top of a static sort of contact list or lead list in an Excel.
No. And what else do you think would matter in this circumstance? Because obviously, lead tracking and making sure that a lead is followed through, followed up, that's the value of what you're saying with your overdue tasks and the reminders. Did you want to go through like some of the AI automations that are also available through this?
Yes, so a lot of people that I speak to when they say AI, what they mean are automations, but AI is sort of a more exciting one. So I can start with like a basic automation. So what you can have here again versus like a spreadsheet or a very entry level static CRM is the ability to create automations where you can say when a lead comes in, without needing to be a software developer or a code, when the stage is set to new lead, I want to add an action. I want to update the record. I want to send an email. I want to send an SMS. I want to trigger an AI action, maybe send a WhatsApp. I want to add followers. Like maybe add the senior broker if a certain condition, like the loan size is greater than $1 million, then add the senior broker because they need to be aware of those deals. Or I want to, trigger something else. You can create these sort of if-then automations. So as soon as the lead comes in, based on criteria, location, lead source, you can then build like sort of logic into the system. And that's, I guess, like the next level of sound where I was comparing it to sort of like an executive assistant that can work 24/7 when you sleep. So lead comes in overnight, it can auto tag, auto send a template, auto do a next step. So a lot of people I speak to when they say AI, that's really what they have in mind. Automated emails, automated follow-ups, automated like tagging and prioritizing so they can focus if they've had 10 inquiries come in over the weekend or overnight, they can like prioritize the top 3 as an example. If you do actually want to connect your paid AI account, your ChatGPT, your Gemini, I think at the moment as well, also adding Claude, because it is one database, you can actually connect those in natively and then and again on the paid account where it's got a lot more confidentiality and security, give them sort of access to your database and connect it so that when you, beyond the automation stage and the simple if-then automations, automated actions, you actually want to, give sort of plain English prompts, do this, generate that, the AI can run on your behalf and, show you a list of things or reports or things like that. So that's sort of, I guess, the beginner level is just having a static CRM that's a bit more visual in one place. Intermediate is having automated if-then sort of actions. And the advanced is having, an AI connector that has access to your data across multiple apps and workflows. So you can sort of plain text prompt it and get it to agentically sort of move through your system.
Nice. And I guess coming back to the AI part and the features of it, you can also do summarization and surfacing of information. So, if you asked, for example, who has settled a loan 2 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
it could probably be able to surface all that type of information.
Yeah, those sort of plain text prompts rather than going here, clicking a report. And again, some people just, even like I said, it'd be a big win, just have all their data in one system and be able to pull up all their people they haven't heard from in 6 months or people who inquire with them but never bought. And just that is a big step up. or for others, it's an automated send a reactivation if this. But yeah, you can also have AI level the same way you ask AI a question to plan your holiday, and it sort of does a lot of actions based on a simple text prompt. You can do the same with Odoo, especially because it's in one system, everything's organized. You're not connecting to 5 different systems, and then there's a duplicate contact in 2 different software.
Nice. And then the document collection process, it's not the same as what we call in industry fact find, but you do have a way to gather data for
Um,
and forms
Yeah, so,
for a
so a lot of
portal.
things in Odoo, it is designed across more industries. So we're not a finance, mortgage, commercial finance specific software. So some things are built, again, a bit more horizontally across multiple industries. Like I haven't got them on here, but manufacturers, wholesalers, we have apps for that. But in a mortgage workflow, I would sort of help people map out their workflows and see what they need. But you can build, custom forms, client portal to have people submit documents, signature requests, have people e-sign agreements and collect documents and mold Odoo into what you need it to do. But it's a tiny bit less out of the box. That's the trade-off. A lot of out of the box are quite rigid. So if you're growth minded, you're entrepreneurial, you want to add extra things to your business, often they're quite locked down. The trade-off with Odoo is a lot more powerful, but it does require a little bit more upfront configuration. But yeah, you can do document gathering, fact finding, tracking all the stages of that as well, all through a deal life cycle, and having all that connected again in a single place.
No problems. And I guess sometimes when you are doing, say, for example, a web inquiry, you might be able to just do the web form type of information, which is not even a full fact find anyway. It's basic, and therefore it won't hopefully hold any PII type of documentation, because that type of information obviously needs to be locked down in a better service environment. And so Odoo's not really made for that type of document collection, the PII stuff, but it is made for general inquiry kind of processes.
Yeah, and like I said, there are different hosting methods, different levels of security you can optimize it for, and obviously the regulations sort of change and evolve. But yeah, we do have different methods, different ways of working with people, but we can also work together with other document collection systems. If you want to use this as almost like your business management, like I said, growing your business, generating leads, tracking it, following up, tracking who's doing what, when, and where, but have a supplementary tool that's industry optimized for, just collecting the data, and still have a link to that notice. So you can click on a client, go to that in the second tab, and then sort of see everything you need. So there's, quite a few, practical real world ways. I'm happy to show people as well if they want individually to their business in how we would sort of, again, have a lot more power to sort of make it fit exactly how their business fits.
Yeah, and I guess that's the power of the AI API rather, integrations or Zapier and or whatever other tool you want to
Mm.
use to do that process.
Yeah, so we have open APIs, which are again like digital bridges between other software. So that's very possible. And even out of the box, there's a lot of, like I said, built-in automations or ways to create a custom web form in Odoo. And those fields on the form, you can have conditional logic. If they're a business, you add that, what's the ABN field? If they're not, ask for this. And that can all push, like I said, straight into Odoo natively without needing APIs, Zapier, Make.com. So there are quite a lot of sort of automations given this one database that you can quite powerfully put together. And I help show people those sort of things every day.
Perfect. And I guess some of the other things that I have found in the industry is having a portal for referral partners to track and measure. Did you say Odoo does portals as well?
Yeah, so we have a customer portal. So you can have a contact, you can grant them portal access so that they have a login, basically a free login, so it doesn't cost you any extra. And then you can have documents, you can have help desk tickets, you can customer service tickets, project status. So again, someone can see the progress of their loan. I mentioned before, I'd sort of having like a project task with like a commercial loan. You can share this projects, which would be a replica of a template with the client and also maybe their accountant or other people, again, with no extra cost, so they can see as tasks get sort of, marked off, approved or cancelled, they can have a login and for free see exactly where it's up to, as well as in different views, like a list view and who's assigned and when the due date is. They can see that, like I said, versus having to call, follow up, ask for things. They can see that, they can comment, they can be assigned tasks, like I said, an external accountant, financial planner, other people who might need to sort of see the progress. And also, like I said, for the more intermediate people, you can also have automations. Like when a certain task is complete, auto send an email, an SMS, or auto follow up if something's not responded to in a certain amount of days. So this is sort of the baseline, but there are, like I said, intermediate and even advanced levels on top once you're comfortable. And when you're at the right readiness for it, that you can definitely do.
Perfect. And you can kind of customize what they have access to see or not see.
Yeah, so like so for most clients, you would, like I said, have a project that's just for them. So they're not seeing any of your other projects, any of your other clients, or if there's, someone has two loans with you, but one's for their business, one's personal. Obviously, the business partner, you would add on the business one, but maybe it's their spouse, you add on the personal one. So it's not all intermingled. At a sort of project by project level, you can control who sees it. And for document folders for submitting documents, you can control exactly who's added onto that and put things behind a login versus a public link and other things like that to control, who has access. Because that's a big part of cybersecurity is access controls, not just staff within your business, which we can handle,
Hmm.
but also external parties and what they have sort of visibility and access to.
Nice. And I'm just trying to think it through because ultimately, this is usually what happens here at Broker Tools is when we have a client who comes on board, they're like, oh, I need to just really clean up my lead management system. And my first thing is, okay, so how do you go through who is the source? Does it come from your website? Is there a referral partner? Then we have to mark that up. And so that's obviously like your contact pile. This person has come in and then you put their contact in. But then it heads over to the CRM side of things because you're like, this is an opportunity or a deal that we need to work on. And then from there, you should track and measure along what stage it is. That's what those stage markings are for. And then you have those automations within the system to say, hey, just follow up a reminder to the client. You haven't finished this, or it's a follow up to the teammate because you need to do this task, or we got this piece of document back. That CRM holds those status updates, I guess. And like you said, you can add a follower. So this means that if you are just I guess, the broker itself, but you have a team lead, they're not the assigned broker, they're the team leader. But so they want to have an overview of what you're doing. And that's what that follower watch is. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right. Yeah, so you have sort of and again, the other benefit of Odoo is it's quite a similar interface across all the apps. So once you learn like the CRM, for example, you click on it and you see the details here on the left, and here on the right is the internal chatter. And that's where I could have an activity assigned to myself to call this person tomorrow. And again, these can be sort of automated or manual, but I could also assign activity to someone else or view all my activities across all the apps and things. And that's like my to-do list instead of relying on my memory or my inbox. Or if I'm away, someone else in the business say, oh, what's Derek assigned to? He's sick for 3 days. Let me bulk reassign them to myself. And or I can jump in and see an internal note or things that were logged here. What's the next step? What was it the past emails? That'll all be logged along the right, call notes. What's the thing? They can pick up the file in a heartbeat and kind of keep moving so that the client experience doesn't suffer, which often in a smaller business, a lot relies on people's memories, their inbox, their phone, and not being able to hand off if someone's sick, they're away, something happens, they leave the business, someone new joins the business, being able to have a central brain and a central system makes that sort of growing pains that a lot of businesses have, or the onboarding of new staff, or the reluctance even to hire or grow, bring on team members because it's such a heavy lift to get them trained up. But if it's in a system, the system is sort of half the training. Oh, what's the next stage? What's their phone number? What were the last notes? What's the scheduled activity? So much of that sort of challenge of bringing on team members and pulling away from the day to day is sort of the training logic beyond the e-learning is sort of built into the actual logic of the system where you've turned your workflows into a repeatable process.
Perfect. And then because I guess from a CRM point of view, it's really about lead management and the sales pipeline. It doesn't really go into project details, and that's where your project management kind of does. So if you need to do specific valuations and really need to drill down on more so deeper tasks and workflow management, that's where your project tool would come into place.
Yeah, and that's where the sort of, some people talk about the front stage of the business, the backstage of the business. The front stage is the referral partner relationships, the client relationships, the other related sort of parties that are involved, tracking all of that for when the broker, but then when they hand off to their sort of admin team, that's where you can have a clear line. And like I said, it's a blank system when you start, so it's up to you to build it how you want. And we have teams that can help with that. I help people with that as well. That's where you can have the project. So the more admin back office part, processing team can sort of do that part, and the sales can focus on creating a fantastic high touch responsive customer experience to their clients. and potential clients and referral partners and keep everyone updated and things like that and deliver a great front stage experience without getting bogged down and lost in the backstage. And the backstage can sort of be really successful in helping the front stage, and the whole business can sort of flow together versus being disjointed, or, admin people are trying to look in the CRM and move things around, that salesperson's trying to see what their projects are up to. Everyone has sort of confidence in exactly where everything's up to, including the client, most importantly.
Nice. And then I guess obviously the bonus ads are like document presentations. And so if you're making an offer, you want to present it nicely, you can do that within documents. Is that the place that you would do that?
Do you mean for sort of sharing information to a client or knowledge articles or?
Or, well, more so like presentation. So if you say, "Hey, we've done the assessment of your loan opportunity. This is, I forget the terms. I'm not a broker,
No, no, that's
but
okay.
but at the end of the day, it's almost like a what do you call it? A PowerPoint type presentation, and then sometimes some brokers I work with get them to sign off that they've agreed to this offer or this pathway of moving forward.
Yeah, so you would use the Documents app to compile that, have all that there, and then you could, yeah, send that for signature, and they can email and see whether fields they have to fill in, whether they have to sign, other information, where they can see sort of the full review, or the broker could do it on a screen share with the client, show them through it, send them the link, they sign it. So yeah, and like I said, a lot of the Odoo apps, and I'm always intrigued some days chatting to different clients how they use different apps, because like I said, across different industries, people use things quite differently, but that's where you can do a sort of presentation of findings for sort of signature, sign off, or sharing it with the documents folder. You give them a link behind a login so they can log in their own time and see it securely. That's sort of another area where people sort of share information and then send it for signature at the end.
Perfect. And then this is the gift of the knowledge base because this is where it can hold all like as in your operational information.
Yeah, it's just sort of like an intranet. I don't hear the word intranet much more these days, but it used to be a
Yep.
big sort of thing, having like an internal knowledge base. So these articles can be private. Again, they're just sort of essentially rich text files with videos and links. And so even Odoo is a 8,000 person company. We have very comprehensive internal operating procedures, manuals, onboardings, trainings. So your team can sort of self-serve and figure things out rather than always coming back to you. So you can have your training videos in e-learning, but your sort of documentation, links, and again, you can link something internally as well because it's all sort of interlinked. But you can also share these articles. You'll see here to share, and you can have public articles. So obviously, internal operating procedures are internal. You might have ones behind a login for clients, like here's our process, here's our thing. And then you might have public articles, which are FAQs, things you want to use as like a lead magnet to push people to publicly before they even reach out to you, perhaps. But they see your expertise helping, people do complex restructuring, small business lending, maybe, complex other arrangements or refinancing in specific industries with particular, lending criteria. So you can have public knowledge articles, private to clients, and then private to just your employees on, how they do their roles. And that knowledge app is sort of, again, quite a powerful sort of feature of Odoo as an intranet, which a lot of big companies have and are very good at, but a lot of small businesses, it's just kind of a Word document somewhere, or it's an email, or it's something, versus when you're a new hire, here are the 20 things you need to read and go through.
Perfect. And I guess when somebody wants to introduce agentic AI and having an AI agent run it, this is where that knowledge base will really be helpful for them.
Yeah, like the AI can, read essentially everything in your database. So it can read your past customers, your sales, your past templates, pull up reports, access your business intelligence dashboard. So that's where, yeah, by having everything here, even if you feel you're a year or two away from being ready for AI because you're getting things organized, you're changing systems, maybe you've bought another brokerage or absorbed another business or changed how you operate, you're setting the foundation. So it's not a sunk cost, it's sort of an investment in your future. When you want to, you can, like I said, use it without automations, but when you want to, you can automate. And when you want to go to the next level beyond that, you can add agentic AI to do things on your behalf.
Perfect. And I guess the gift of Odo in particular is that all of this is inclusive in the one price. It's
Yes,
not
and
like
that's
as in,
the
sorry, I was going to
no,
say,
no, that's
because
okay.
you'll
Yeah, so
notice.
it's sort of there you go. You.
What I was saying is you'll notice that with most CRM software, or when you start looking for CRM software, people will just sell you that component. But then marketing is another, or automated emails is another component that you have to upgrade and pay for.
Yes, that's right. So that's a big point of difference with Odoo. Is very transparent, all-inclusive pricing. So it's normally about $400 to $800 per year per user plus GST, but that includes all the apps. So, like I said, when you want to do email marketing or something, you don't push up to a higher tier. You've already paid for email marketing, your e-learning, your events, your CRM, your appointment scheduler to have a public link where people can directly schedule through the appointments link, your help desk customer service ticketing, other new apps that Odoo releases every year as well. You've already paid for them, your e-sign, it's all there. There's some tiny extra costs that can come up here or there. Like, for example, if you're sending SMS marketing, Odoo is sort of your portal to do that, but it is through Twilio or third party, so it's sort of a send to message. Or if there's something you do paid events and you take payments through Stripe on your website, Stripe have a small percentage merchant fee, like all the payment processors, but it goes to Stripe, not to Odoo, but we connect into Stripe so that you can sell tickets to your event or, training course or other things that you do. And always happy to chat through with people, but very transparent. Pricing's all on our website, nothing's hidden, and it is all inclusive. You don't suddenly, or you can have multiple pipelines, unlimited number of contacts. You don't sort of suddenly trip over and find your bills doubled. It's very sort of transparent and all inclusive, and that's part of the sort of Odoo philosophy.
Nice. And I guess because so many people are used to per person per month pricing, it roughly equals around 35-ish per month.
Yeah, if you sort of take it down to monthly, between sort of 30 to 65 a month per user per month. So a bit more than, $1 to $2 a day or half a coffee in sort of Melbourne or Sydney for each of your team members. You're getting powerful functionality. And like I said, an improving system. We are actively improving the product every year. Every September, October, our big release. Lots of new features come out, lots of new things, and you get that for free. Plus tech support. You're not like paying for the new version or having to weigh off the cost of the new version at the same price. You're getting new features constantly created and, across the clients all over the world and best practices.
Nice. If people wanted to reach out to you, Derek, and learn more about Odo, where should they go and what should they do?
Yeah, so I've got a slide here with all my contact details. So to get in contact, happy to do a 45-minute consult with anyone over a Google Meet who's interested. I'm sure Kate will put the link in the description to the podcast directly to book into my calendar. You can scan the QR code. Obviously, you can directly email me at deste@odoo.com. I've always got my phone on me as well, so you can even call me, text me, WhatsApp me, and happy to have a direct chat. I know a lot of brokers are on the go in the car. You want a quick call while you're driving between. Always happy to call and jump in a call and be quite accessible to help answer those questions and help them out.
Perfect. Thank you so much for joining me on the pod, Derek. It was great to have you.
Thanks so much, Katie. Really appreciate your time and for having me on.
You're welcome. All right. If you guys have questions or more questions for Eric, please put them down below. Feel free to like, share, and do all the good things that we always love at Broker Tools. And till next time, we'll catch you around. Bye.